It's not clickbait, and unfortunately, it's happened more than once. Today we're going to talk about losing clients or getting fired and how to handle it. What's up guys, I'm Colt Capperrune. Thank you so much for stopping by for another video. So today I'd like to go over how I deal with this emotionally and physically, the steps that I take to try to minimize the amount of times that this happens, and then when it does finally happen, if you finally get there, how do you actually handle this from a business perspective? So for those of you that have been following the channel for any length of time, you know that my goal with this channel is just to be the mentor that I wish that I would have had 18 years ago. Well, this is definitely one of those topics that I really could have used some guidance on. Before we get into it, I just want to say a quick thank you to all those that have sent me emails and messages on social media and left me comments and whatnot. I have not uploaded a video in a month now, and I didn't really intend to do that. Everything's fine, there's nothing wrong. I appreciate very much you all reaching out to check on me. I just thought I would take like a week or maybe a week and a half off, and it turned into a month. Here we are, but we're back. The important thing is that we're back. One of the hardest things with what that we do here is when a client is so unhappy with your work. There are such great creative or personality differences that they decide to leave the project, to either take their project and go finish it somewhere else, or they decide to scrap it altogether, to just throw it in the trash, and all the hard work that you've put into it is just gone. That's a hard pill to swallow. In my opinion, this is so much worse than getting fired from, you know, an office job or a typical day job. There's something about creating music with someone, with another human being, that connects us in a different way than just about anything else that we could do. When you're creating music with someone, you're like opening your soul to them. And so because of that, when they decide to walk away from the project, that they don't like what's happening, or they don't like you, or they don't like what you've done for their music, this can really feel like the most crushing personal attack ever. Unfortunately, if you've been doing this for any length of time at all, if you've been a producer or a mix engineer or a session player or whatever it is, anything within music really, if you've been doing this for any length of time, you've gotten fired before. First, I want to say that this happens to all of us. It does not matter how long you've been doing this or how successful you are, this happens to all of us. So know that if you've experienced this, you are certainly not alone. Okay, so emotionally, it blows, especially the first couple times it happens. The first handful of times you get fired, it's terrible. It's one of the worst feelings I've ever felt. So now that I've been through this a handful of times over the past couple decades, there's a few things that I make sure that I never do. I never ever let my thoughts or my words or my actions become unprofessional. I do my absolute best to communicate like in a clear, calm, respectful, friendly even way throughout the duration of the project, regardless of how sideways it's going. So I continually remind myself throughout every project that the music is their baby. It's their project, and my job, the way I look at this, my job as a producer or a mixer or even a session guitarist or mastering engineer, my job is just to shine the most marketable, flattering light I can on their music. But it's still their music, it's still their baby and their project. And I'm just being hired to take their project to the next level. In the early days of my career, I had a real hard time getting my ego out of the way enough to look at things like this. So what I find is most of these situations come down to miscommunication. Either I didn't really understand what the client wanted and what they were after, or they didn't do a good job communicating what they were after and what they liked and disliked. Of course, there were plenty of times in the early days of my career where I just sucked at what we were doing. And so in the early times of my career, in the early days, I did lose clients because I was just kind of sucky at what I did and they wanted something better. But as I have moved on throughout my career, and as my skill set has grown, and as my level of success has grown, me sucking at a thing has increasingly become not the reason why me and a client go separate ways. There certainly were also times in the early part of my career where I could have been more professional. I could have been friendlier and more professional and a better communicator. Okay, so physically, here are some of the things that I do with every client on every project to try to minimize the chances of this happening. So first, I try to only take projects that I'm actually a good fit for. Now, I realize it took a lot of years for me to get to that point where I could kind of be choosy about the work that I took on. So throughout those years, I just continually paid attention to all the things that I could change that would lessen the chances of this happening. So in the beginning of each project, I'm extremely adamant about the detail of the communication that we have. I want to discuss every single facet of this project. So I want every single client that chooses to hire me or that's interested in hiring me to have heard my previous work. Ideally, heard previous work that's similar to their own music. So I'm sure to send every single potential client my website, and if I need to send more examples of past work of mine that line up with their project, then I will send them my website and links to other music I've worked on that's similar to their own. Now, obviously, we all have to start somewhere, and you may not have a library of work built up like this with which to send people, and that's totally okay. The point here, what I'm trying to avoid here when I'm doing this, is I'm trying to avoid getting hired just because I happen to be a guy that does a thing that the client wants. I don't want to just be hired because I happen to have a studio or because I happen to be a mix engineer or I happen to be a producer. I want to be hired because they've heard my work and they want me on their project. And at the very least, if you don't have this library of music built up to do this, at the very least, you want to create some sort of rapport with them. You want to create some level of trust with them. You want them to trust you and know that you are on their side, that you want the best for their project. And so this is what you actually want when you get hired from someone. I don't want this to be like hiring a plumber where you just flip open the yellow pages or Google, plumbing, whatever city you're in on your phone and just pick the first one that comes up. I never want to be that guy. I don't want to be chosen by default. I want to be chosen for a specific reason. When I'm working with an artist in which I'm producing, I want to create a total game plan for each individual song before we even get started. And I want them included in this game plan. They're either sitting here in studio or we're on a Zoom call or we're on a phone call, and I'm laying out every details. I'm listening to the song. I'm talking about things that I hear, stops, breaks. I'm talking about where I want a double time or a halftime feel, what instruments I think are gonna work well with this song, what session players I'd like to use, and I'm physically taking notes. I'm actually writing all of this stuff down in front of the client, or at least on the phone call with the client. So they're perfectly aware. It's crystal clear what my plans are for their song. And this gives them the chance to either have some input on this in which that they can have more of their own personality in it, their likes and their dislikes, or they can at least have the opportunity to object to the things that I'd like to do and that I'm hearing for their song. And giving them this opportunity to object to your game plan, for me, is a pretty important part of the process. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing when I'm producing for an artist is I am sending them 2 or 3 or 4 rough versions of the song as I work my way through it to get their thoughts, to get their feedback. I want to clearly communicate that it's not finished. There's work left to be done. So don't take this as a finished product, but I want to make sure that they're cool with all the things that I've done so far. And so if they have something to object to, the less far along you are within the project, the less chance there is of them walking away. Now, this is a fine balance because obviously you want to be confident in your ability and in your work. You never want to come off as insecure to your clients. You just want to come off like you care about their input, you want them to be included, and you'd like to make sure that you're doing what they like for the project. What you want to avoid is getting to 90% of the way through the project and then finding out that they don't really like anything about it. That's a bad day, and that greatly increases the chances of them just trashing it and walking away, because most of the time they will feel, even if you're willing to rebuild the song, most of the time they will feel, Like it's too late. It's too far down the wrong path for them to change it now. So for mixing, this is one of the reasons why I include several revisions. I include this in my mix rate, is I want the client to be rest assured that if I happen to completely miss the mark on the first mix, that they're not getting charged for that. They get another revision in which they can give me all of their notes, and then I can redo the mix if I need to. So giving a client several mix revisions for free or included in the rate is one of the things that has helped me a lot. Just give them the peace of mind, and never, it really helps keep clients from wanting to throw in the towel because they know, oh, it's okay, we're just not to the finish line yet. That's okay. So this next thing is just the way that I look at this, and you may not view this the same way, and that's perfectly fine, but anything that I'm working on musically, I kind of view as just a set of problems that I have to solve. And when there are no more problems to solve, then it's finished. And so when I say problems to solve, this can mean a whole bunch of different things. This can mean like the kick drum doesn't sound very good. That's a problem I have to solve. Or the vocal is kind of harsh, and that's a problem I have to solve. When I'm producing for someone, how do I keep a listener engaged 100% of the time through the song? Like that's a problem I have to solve. How do I do what is appropriate for the music, for the song, and for the client and what they want, while being unique and fresh? Like this is a problem I have to solve. So I'm using the word problem in a very, very vague sense, but I kind of approach this whole music thing, regardless of what I'm doing, is just a series of problems that need solved. And when there are no more problems to solve, the song is done. And nowadays, I actually communicate that to my clients. I actually tell them that, hey, all we're doing here is solving a bunch of problems until there's no more problems to solve. And I've kind of found that this also gives the client some peace of mind that it's okay if it's not there yet. It's okay if we're not finished yet. It's okay if the song isn't where they would like it to be yet. We're just not done with it yet. And so that new approach and actually communicating that has really helped clients stay on board the duration of a project. Okay, so recap before we move on to talking about the business side of how to deal with losing a client. So first, crystal clear communication. Ideally, you want them to hear examples of your work. You want them to hire you for you, not because you're just someone who happens to do what they need. I create a game plan for each song individually, and I include the client on creating this game plan, so that way they have the option to object or to have their own input on what they like and dislike. I send them updates on a regular basis throughout the course of producing a project. Obviously, I don't do this in mixing. They just get the first mix, and then they get the chance to have revisions included in my rate. And I also communicate with the client that it's just a series of problems that need solved, and when they're all solved, we're all done. Okay, so what happens when you've done all of these things? You've done everything to the best of your ability, and they still decide to walk away and either not finish the project at all, or they decide to take it to someone else to finish. Now, thankfully for me, that this happens pretty rarely at this point, but it still does happen to me, and it is going to happen to you. So remember at the beginning when we talked about the music being their baby, it's their project, and you're just supposed to shine the most flattering, marketable light on their music as you possibly can. Well, this is still the same situation now, even when they've decided to fire you or take the project and finish it somewhere else. Now, I do always try to salvage the situation when they've finally said to me that they would like to trash the project, or when they finally said to me that they would like to go somewhere else and finish it. I do always try to salvage the project. I want an actual phone call, or preferably a face-to-face meeting, because communicating via text and emails is just a terrible way of communicating anyway, especially when you're trying to convey vibes and emotions. It's a terrible way to communicate. So I always try to salvage the situation. I want to have an actual phone call, or preferably have them in the studio and figure out a game plan on how we can salvage the project. I'm never pushy about this. I never react in anger or hurt or crushed. I'm still maintaining the same mindset the whole way through the project, that it's just a series of problems we have to solve until we get to the finish line, and that we will absolutely get to the finish line as long as we stick with this for long enough. And then after all of that, if they still want to throw in the towel, they're not willing to come in and work on anything else, then, they're not willing to continue trying to solve these problems, then that's on them, and I can rest assured knowing that I did actually do everything in my power to get the project to the finish line and to make my client happy. Now, from a business perspective, this is personally one of the reasons I charge 100% up front. Now, when I say 100% up front, I don't necessarily mean I charge the full amount for the song up front. What I mean is I'm always paid for the work that I've already done. So oftentimes what I'll do throughout producing a song is I'll take a payment and I will work until that payment has been used up, and then I'll take another payment, and then I will work until that payment has been used up. And this ensures that I'm, one, never burned by anybody, that I can never just be absolutely screwed by somebody not paying me, which has also happened a ton of times, and maybe that needs to be its own video. But two, it also ensures that if we get to this place where the client feels they need to throw the project away or go have someone else finish it, I've been compensated for the work that I've done. Because I do believe that even if a project goes in the garbage, even if they actually throw it away and decide to never touch it again, you still put time and effort into this, and you are still owed for your time and effort. Now, I realize that it's very hard to charge up front like this in the beginning of your music career. I understand that. I wasn't able to pull this off until about halfway through my career. My point is that if you can pull this off, awesome. And if not, maybe you can do something like making sure you're paid in full at the end of each session or something like that. Basically, what you want to do is you want to minimize the chance for you to lose time and lose money because of this situation. And also because you've already done all the other things that we've talked about in this video. You've already went above and beyond. You've already done everything in your physical power to make sure that the project went smoothly and to completion and that you made your client happy. And so if you've actually done all of those things, then you should be compensated for that. So whatever makes the most sense to you, whether you're getting paid 100% up front for an entire project, whether you're getting paid at the beginning of each session, whether you're getting paid at the end of each session, I do think it's important to try to minimize your chance for loss. You want to minimize that. Now, this next one is a touchy topic, and I had a real issue with this in the earlier years in my career. So you and a client decide to part ways and go your separate directions, but they want the session. They want the Pro Tools or the Logic session because they would like to finish it somewhere else or finish it on their own. What do? So in the early years of my career, I just used to be like, no, screw them. Screw them. They can go start over somewhere else. I'm not giving them their session. But it did not take very many years for me to get over this ego problem that I had, because that's really what it was an ego problem. Now, what I actually want is the very best for all of my clients no matter what. So that's the first priority. I want the best for my clients no matter what. And if I actually wanted the best for them, then I would happily give them their session so they could go finish it somewhere else, because that's what they wanted to do. Now, I will say that I would never give someone a session if they owed me money. I would never give someone a session if they still owed me money. They would have to pay whatever they owed me before I gave them their Pro Tools session or their Logic session or whatever. But if they've paid in full and they don't owe you anything, just give them their session. Trust me on this, just give me their session. And a couple things. One, it's what they want. And they hired you, and it's your job to give them what they want. And two, if you guys got to the point where you decided to part ways, the likelihood of them bad-mouthing you to other artists in your area or nationally or on social media, that's actually a fairly high likelihood. And so you want to minimize the chances of that as much as you can. So if you just give them the session and they're allowed to go do whatever they want, you don't give them any grief or attitude because you've already done all the things in your power, the likelihood of them bad-mouthing you publicly is much, much less. They're not going to talk great about you either way. You've already missed that opportunity. They're not going to tell someone else that they should come work with you because their project didn't work out that great. So you've missed that. That is not going to happen. So you might as well try to minimize the damage as much as you can. And so give them the session and remain respectful and calm and cool and professional the entire time through all of your communication. And depending on the client and how things went, during the exit, even thank them for the opportunity. Invite them back to work with you at any time. And let them know that you have no hard feelings and that you're sorry that things went this way. But of course, there are some clients that are just a real pain in the ass and you would never want to work with them again, and that's fine too. If you never want to see or work with a client again, I understand. I have a handful of those in my past. But if it's not that, if it's not a screw you, I'm never working with you again, and even in those situations, I'm still sending them their session. But if it's not that, try to make the exit as friendly and cordial as you possibly can. I really wish someone would have told me all of these things 18 years ago. It would have made a whole lot of circumstances in my life and throughout my music career path much easier and much simpler. So I hope that this helped you guys. I hope you got something out of this. If you made it this far, thanks for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment, let me know what you think. Know that you're not alone. This happens to all of us. So I hope that this helped you. All right, see you guys in the next one. Peace.